Okay, then. Well, hi everybody, and welcome along to another course. This one is called Recollecting Death to Benefit the Future. And we'll begin it as we normally do by doing a meditation. And we'll take refuge and generate the mind of enlightenment together. And then I'll explain a bit more about the course, and then we'll sort of get into it. So make yourselves comfortable in your seat. But place your hands wherever you'd like to, and ensure that your back is straight and your shoulders are relaxed. And then allow the body to breathe itself. And while the body breathes itself, become aware of any movements and feelings that arise as you inhale and exhale the breath. So the mind is beginning to focus and the body is beginning to relax. And it's from this relaxed and focused state that you can see in front of you Shakyamuni Buddha with a body made of golden light. He is surrounded by your spiritual mentors, teachers of the lineage, other Buddhas and meditational deities, bodhisattvas, and so forth. So these are in the space in front of you and above you. While surrounding you on the level of your seat are all other sentient beings. These include your parents, friends, family, strangers, and people you had difficulties with. And what you recollect about all the sentient beings is that they're no different than yourself. Every one of them, just like you, wish to avoid suffering. Equally, they have a wish to be happy, and equally lack genuine happiness. We recollect that whatever hinders genuine happiness can be eliminated, and the potential for our genuine happiness abides equally within us all. To actualize the potential, we need to rely upon the Buddha and his lineage and his teachings. So decide to go to the three rare sublime ones for refuge and to lead all the sentient beings around you in going for refuge. And so you can recite the refuge prayer together and the mind of enlightenment that goes with it. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So in response to our prayer, think that lights and nectars come out from the heart of the Buddha. They wash over you and the beings surrounding you, and remove all obstacles and empower your potential and the potential of others. And now recollect the four immeasurable thoughts of compassion, love, joy, and equanimity, and decide to establish all living beings within those four immeasurable states. And again, feel the light and nectars are washing over you and over all beings. Revealing those four qualities as reflections of the mind's nature. Acknowledging that we are below the refuge field and it's in front of us, we will engage in the seven-limb prayer. So joining me again. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginning this time, and rejoice in the veritable holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own and others' merits to the great enlightenment. And now to release ourselves from the last vestiges of clinging that we might have to our own goodness, we can make an offering of a mandala, thinking that our body has transformed into this wonderful pure land. We're going to offer this to the refuge field, to the Buddha, and with the idea that we can give teachings to others effortlessly and continuously in the future. So the mandala offering, this ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Gurata Mandala Kamnayatayami. The Buddha accepts the offering, it smiles at us, and we look up into his eyes, and we feel accepted and at ease. And then an emanation of the Buddha leaves his own heart, moves through space and comes to abide above the crown of your head, facing in the same direction you are. This emanation descends, entering the crown of your head, coming down through your body, resting at the level of your heart. The light of this emanation begins to expand, filling your body and mind. And it seeps out through the pores of your skin and begins to move out, filling the 10 directions of space. Establishing every being within space to be within the enlightened state. the light begins to withdraw and re-enters your heart. You can feel yourself embodied, and you're sitting on a seat, and you're breathing normally and naturally. And there is an acknowledgement by yourself that this has all taken place on the level of imagination, and place the imprint upon your mind for you to actualize a state of enlightenment to bring about the welfare of all living beings. Just accept that, and then breathe in deeply through your nostrils. Then exhale through your mouth and allow yourself to be present. And if your eyes have been closed, allow them to open and move your body in whichever way you feel comfortable. Okay, so hi everyone, and welcome along to this course. So this course is going to be accomplished within 4 weeks. And over that time, we're going to look through what they call the 9 points of the death meditation. I've also included a couple of other topics, the benefits of recollection, the faults of forgetting, and there are a number of different phenomena that can hinder your interest in doing this type of meditation. These are called the 8 worldly concerns. So we'll look at all of these different phenomena, but the main emphasis of these 4 classes will be on the 9 points of our meditation. So why is it important to become familiar with these 9 points? Why is it necessary for us to, let's say, recollect death to benefit our future? So these 9 points will definitely help us to do that. His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that the
just stop your screen share when you're having a nice story.
I'm not going to tell a story.
Not ready yet? Okay.
But thank you. So I just want to say the major point of this meditation is to overcome the grasping at the permanence that we have. So all phenomena, all produced phenomena are impermanent. Often they don't appear that way to us. They seem to be stable and what we call permanent. And there is a grasping at that, or a belief that things are stable and unchanging. With this belief, you can get yourself into lots of different types of troubles. And the idea of having these types of meditations, these types of discussions and presentations, are to prevent those problems. So just to say a couple of things from His Holiness, from a book called Becoming Enlightened. He says the responsibility for us overcoming the view of permanence and behaving badly rests solely upon ourselves. And to become responsible is possible through the reflection upon death and impermanence. So that's really why we're going to sort of have a look at this as a topic. His Holiness finally says that death and impermanence will lead you to think about karma, the cause and effect of actions, which will draw us away from choosing activities of a harmful nature and encourage us to engage in activities that are beneficial. And this itself will lend your life a positive purpose. So today's topic we're going to look at today is impermanence itself, and 6 of the benefits that are accrued when we actually reflect upon our own certainty of death. We'll look at the certainty of death and how the best thing we can do by acknowledging the certainty is the practice of Dharma. Now, I've relied upon a number of different books here. So this big one in the middle here called Wholesome Fear by Lama Zopa Rinpoche and Lam Rim Year, Making Life Meaningful Day by Day. Both of these books are, I mean, all the books are terrific. What's very good about these two books is how the information has been really condensed down to, like, in Wholesome Fear, each meditation's within 2 pages. Lam Rim Year, it's 1 page. So everything is really nutted down, and all the other books sort of expand it out, but these ones condense it all. So you want to get to the essential point, you get to it very quickly with the 2 books here by Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and then the final book down here, Wholesome Fear by Lama Zopa Rinpoche. To flesh, like I said, all this information out, I've used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other books, and they all have valuable information, some things you'll find are useful within them. So let's begin. So this is a lovely quote from Patrul Rinpoche's his famous book, Words of My Perfect Teacher. So as you can see, he says, impermanence is everywhere, yet I still think things will last. I have reached the gates of old age, yet I still pretend I'm young. Bless me and misguided beings like me, that we may truly understand impermanence. So here we have impermanence, and one of the outcomes of impermanence, of course, is death. And we, as beings who are impermanent because we have been produced, will eventually die. So to contemplate or to become familiar with the topic of death is neither morbid nor unrealistic. In fact, as His Holiness says, to the contrary, it helps us to prepare for death and to live with more wisdom and kindness. So I'm in my mid-60s now, and yet I still think I'm young. I still have the way of thinking like when I was between 17 and 19. In fact, inside myself, I feel very youngish. Of course, I'm not. And yet I still carry on in many ways as if I was that youthful person of 17, 19. So I'm one of those misguided people. You know, I haven't truly understood impermanence yet. And many of us who are here, we might find ourselves in the same basket that I find myself in. Right? So
Eddie, just give us a look at you to see how young and youthful you look, my dear.
So I want to talk about this topic called impermanence. And so there's 2 ways we can look at this phenomena called impermanence. One is called the subtle view of it, and the other is a more gross or an easier way to understand things. The more difficult, the subtle understanding of emptiness is that anything that is produced, meaning anything that depends upon causes and conditions, is in a state of disintegration. It's actually falling apart. And it doesn't need anything to make it fall apart. It's just the cause and conditions that have brought it together are actually also in a state of disintegration. And so the phenomena it produces is also in a state of disintegration. So there are very few permanent things in this world. The vast majority is impermanent, meaning it's produced through causes and conditions. And we are one of those phenomena. We as persons are impermanent, we're subject to change. The body that we have is subject to change, and our mind is changing all the time.
So, Eddie, is this why, like, so when kids ask their parents, you know, but mummy, why do people have to die? This is the answer, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, because we're subject to impermanence.
Yeah. So it's much better than just that's just how things are, because that's not really an answer, but that we're you know, that we're produced, that we're subject to impermanence makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's just the truth, isn't it? It's just a fact. Yeah. So that's on the subtle side of it. Right? The gross side, gross impermanence, refers to the stopping or the ceasing of the continuity of an object. So all of us here engaging in this program, we're continuing, right, aren't we? If our death were to hit us now, our life, its continuation of the life is finished. So that's what, so in terms of persons, it's like the death is gross impermanence. Our continuity of being alive in this world stops. If you have a building, its gross impermanence is that it gets knocked down. It no longer ceases to function as a building. Perhaps it could be burnt down, it might even be flooded, but its function comes to an end. So we have to, we understand that. I think that's pretty straightforward. But it's saying, bless me and misguided beings like me that we may truly understand this impermanence. So I think here we've got this interesting section, truly understand. So as people engage in a spiritual journey or quest or development, we have different levels of understanding our impermanence that we can bring to our practice. So just knowing this as an ordinary person, one would be sort of ask themselves, so what happens? Does something happen after death? Could something happen after death? Or was just death just like the end? So you might ask yourself that question. If you're even more interested in answering this question, you would go further, you'd study further, you'd deepen your inquiry. And if you were to adopt the Buddhist way of living and understanding phenomena, you'd read up about this topic and the mind and so forth, and you could see, okay, the body comes to an end in this lifetime. I mean, that's the end of that continuity. Our gross consciousnesses, they also stop, but there's something else that goes on. That is a very subtle mind, which also has a subtle level of energy towards it, and there's also the I, the person. You might ask, so what types of experiences are there then after death? And as you know, some of them are very horrific. And so the first thing is a spiritual person engaged in this path is, wow, the first thing I've got to do is avoid that. That's what I do not want to happen to me. And you can say, okay, so what would happen if I avoided that? If I did not take rebirth in a lower realm or some worse horror, terror, well, you'll be reborn again. And you'll avoid all those difficult rebirth situations. So you'll come back as, again, hopefully, as a human being with a leisure and opportunity to engage in your spiritual path again. And you say, and so does that just keep happening? Is that the go? And of course you find, no, actually you could achieve a state of liberation from that uncontrolled process of rebirth. But again, this depends upon how you use your understanding of the mind. You go, and is that it? And you go, no, there's another option as well. So you can see that in one way, gross death or ordinary death stops the continuation of this life. But the person, the I, goes on. So we need to just accept this and know how to use our understanding of death and impermanence so we get the very best results we can. So His Holiness again, just from a book called The Foundation of Buddhist Practice, His Holiness says, awareness of the fleeting nature of life spurs us to engage in what is beneficial for this life, as well as what is meaningful for lives to come. There is a Lam text which encourages us to think of impermanence in 5 different ways. And these are the 5. You can think of impermanence in terms of the impermanence of destruction. So here I'll put the pictures of the Twin Towers. So this is referring to the annihilation of something that once existed. So destruction in terms of impermanence. The second is cultural trends and attitudes, the impermanence of those. So as we know, there are many changes that take place within society and over our lifetimes. This is referring to that type of impermanence. The impermanence of separation means that whatever comes together must separate. So this is terrific to remember if any relationship we have with anything, whether it be a pet, a close friend, a spouse, your own house. This is going to come to an end. Your job, you're going to separate. The next one is called sudden impermanence. And this is when circumstances change really quickly and unexpectedly. So, you might be standing outside and then the ground starts to shake, like suddenly. And so you realize, oh my God, it's an earthquake. Or you're feeling fine, but there's something niggly. You might think, I've got the flu. I go along to see the doctor, and they actually tell you, yes, you have the flu, but there's something even worse. And this is put upon you like suddenly. And finally, we have, it's just the nature of anything that is produced through causes and conditions. Whatever's produced is transitory. So it is not stable, even though you might want it to be. And there's a sense of unpredictableness about this. Things could change like suddenly. Separation can take place very, very quickly and over time. Miffy, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm just looking at these 5 and just thinking, wow, it's actually kind of resisting these 5 things that create so much angst and unhappiness, because
Yes,
even just like this last one of the nature, just saying, but I don't want it, I don't like it like that, just makes it even worse. But if you just go, it's the nature of it and this is why, it takes a whole lot of pressure off.
Yeah, it does. I wish we got taught this like in school. We should have been taught something like this. It would have made us sort of, in one way, sort of like relax into this reality that we're in, but also be like, hey, hang on, this life I've got is subject to all this.
So much of our culture fights against this reality. Instead, it's the exact opposite.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So this is, so we're, this is part of our way, our being, right? We have a body and a mind, we're persons, we're subject to impermanence. And the impermanence can manifest in these 5 ways. So in relationships, Nagarjuna says, your life dwells amongst the causes of death, like a lamp standing in a strong breeze. So Miffy was very helpful. She found this lovely little picture of an Elton John type character. Remember that song, It Seems to Me, You've Lived Your Life Like a Candle in the Wind, that great song. Well, it's like that. So like I said, so society basically is, going to say, sort of, at least the media and stuff was sort of resistant to keep this knowledge in front of us. So they'll do it, of course, when you get the bad news, but there's a particular purpose for that, right? So not being aware of the state of impermanence that we are in, we procrastinate, meaning we don't really focus on what's really important. So the fragility of life calls upon us to engage in a spiritual practice as soon as possible. And there are great benefits for doing so. So I want to like show you 6 in a list, and then we'll briefly go through the 6, and then we'll come to the major part of our teaching today, of the certainty of death. So here are the
Eddie,
6.
Eddie, just see if there's any questions or if anyone's got anything, okay. Because
sure, we're on to sort of like a new part here. So does anybody have anything they'd like to say?
But stop the screen share so you can see people.
So you can see we're both a bit rusty at this. Me more than Miffy. So I need direction, so thanks. Okay, guys, anything you'd like to suggest, to offer, anything to say about what I've put up so far? Okay. Let it just sink in. You might probably have more to think about by the time it comes to an end.
Well, at least we've all seen you now, Eddie, because you've been behind the screen share the whole time as like 1/2 centimetre tall. So hello. Okay.
Well, remember, I won't be here too long. There'll be a sudden cut. Okay, now I'm back to the screen share. So let's go there and have a look at these 6 causes. So the 6 benefits of recollecting death are, first of all, their actions become very beneficial and powerful. Well, your Dharma practice will become powerful once you recollect the benefits of death. Then it's important at the beginning of your practices. It helps you get through the middle stages, and it's incredibly important at the very end. And finally, you will die content. So it's easy to memorize these. It's a very simple memory. So we've got beneficial and powerful. I always just think of BP, the big oil company. That big sign, British Petroleum. But if you have somebody else that you can just go BP to, beneficial and powerful. Beginning, middle, and end, that's really simple, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, beginning, middle, and end. And lastly, come the time of my death, I can die content. Beneficial, powerful, beginning, middle, and end, and that we can die content. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche from Wholesome Fear, page 26 says, many great yogis started by meditating on the shortness of the human life, on impermanence and on death. And their enlightenment, their realizations, and their Dharma practice itself all came from this meditation. their strength and ability to live an ascetic life in extremely isolated places, to practice the vast and profound subjects, and to attain the higher paths, required a great deal of energy. And that's what you get from realizing the certainty of your death. So before I knew anything about the Dharma, I had a situation where I was brought into a medical office, and they're going to tell me, it's funny, isn't it? I'm going to say, they're going to tell me that it was certain I was going to die. I can say, yeah, I know that. Right? But they're saying, no, you're going to die within a couple of years. So I went in with my partner, and that's what she was told. And she just burst into tears. And they said, come in. And they didn't say that to me. But I remember walking in there thinking, if you tell me that I'm going to die in a short period of time, this is what I'm going to do. So I've never forgotten it, because it took a couple of years to come across the Dharma, and here's the same message, right? You're going to die. You need to do something, really important. And I was amazed. I thought, wow, I just had that thought. It just came up without any sort of stuff to base on. Just, I've got to do this before I die. And it's a similar type of thing here, I think. So there are these great benefits. And I said, for me, that was the first one. Like, now I know what to do. Like, I can't mess around anymore. So let's have a look at the benefits and the power of this type of practice. So first, what I've done is just put up some of the different benefits on each of the slides, as you see, right? So you become very anxious. That's what happened to me, to act properly right now. It's so true. Secondly, your energy is greatly increased. And lastly, the great thing is, if you know about the Dharma, right, you can practice it like faultlessly. So you won't be doing things that are just for about this life anymore, because like, this life for me is just about over. I've got this brief window of time to do something properly, meaningfully. And I can do it faultlessly. I know how to do it faultlessly. I've been taught. Yeah. So here, I think that faultlessly means your motivation. Why are you going to do what you're doing? What is it that you really want to do? So that's that. Let's have a look. So then the practice becomes very powerful.
So Eddie, with the faultlessly, so that just doesn't mean being a perfectionist. That means without faults of what? What are the contaminants?
Well, the major fault for most of us who have not recollected death and impermanence is stuff about this life. Right? So that's the biggest fault, being still concerned with the 8 worldly concerns. That would be a terrible mistake for you to make. And so faultlessly here means you are practicing for the benefit of a future life, liberation, or enlightenment.
Right. So because that can happen sometimes when people have a terminal diagnosis or something, and you can fixate on really small things, like got to get the house sold, or show someone how to use the photocopier, and what's the purpose of that?
Yeah. So of course you can still do all of those things. I mean, those are just physical actions basically, aren't they? But the major thing is what is the mind doing? What have you set your mind to do, knowing that the certainty of your death is imminent?
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I mean by faultless. And we can always do that, I think, well. And that's what So sort of having death like in your face. That part you can do well. You can decide how you wish to die. It's your last freedom. You can do that. Practice becoming very powerful. So remember, attachment here means like an overestimation to, and having overestimated, you cling to them. You don't want to be separated from that other object. So these objects here are friends, wealth, reputation, and fame, which are these eight worldly, to do with the eight worldly concerns I talked about in the previous slide. So that stuff will just go like, you'll be going like, what can they really, how can they really help me here? What can these objects, my friends, wealthy, my reputation, and my fame, what use are they to me in the face of the certainty of my death? So that sort of overestimation will fall away. And it's the same sort of thing in terms of the disturbing emotions. In fact, this is one of the great powers of the recollection of the 9 points of the death. That you can see all these disturbing emotions all they can do is harm you. They are no help to you. So just like I said, forget about it, as they say, right? It's no good. So never, all the delusions are lessened. And if you've read books about this or seen films, or even if you know your own set, you've actualized your certainty of death, you realize it. One of the things you could do is get in touch with all the persons you've had disagreements with and unfortunate experiences with. And if you can, get in touch with them and say sorry. Just lay all your stuff down, forget about it, release it. So you don't need to think about it anymore. You give yourself the space to live the last part of your life really meaningfully. And so that, so whatever you want to do after that is quite easy. So here what I've done, as you'll see, as we keep going through, I've just pulled out the major points of all those books I've been reading and going, wow, I think this is really good. This is really good. And of course, if you read those books, you get much more to it than just that. Just let you know. I've just pulled out the section of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's Zopa Rinpoche, Geshe Sopa, and any other person I've read about this material. Now, recollecting death and impermanence is very important at the beginning of practice because it sets a very powerful foundation for pure practice. So pure, again, meaning not involved with the eight worldly concerns, not involved with just the concerns of this life, in other words. So your practice will be done for the sake of future lives. And I think this is very much like the advice our parents probably gave us when we were children. We were to do these things because we're beneficial in the future. We were to go to school and get good marks because it will help us later on in life. And this is the same type of thing here. It's going to help us in the next lives. And again,
that's a really good one, Eddie, because it's just as impossible as it was for me to figure out what on earth I was going to be when I grew up. Like I just couldn't stretch my mind that far. So it's almost easier now to think about, future lives now than like when I was a kid of what on earth, how am I going to enter into the world? But it is as big a stretch though, isn't it?
Yeah. The lovely thing is we're older and we still have some intelligence about us. So we can sort of fit it together. Isn't it? We can just look back, that's not when mum and dad said this, but I didn't get it. But when I say it to myself, I can get it. Right? I'm doing this to look after myself in the future. And it won't benefit just me. It'll benefit everyone that I come into contact with. because that's my aspiration. That's why I'm doing this. So important during the middle. So during the middle of your life and your practice, you gain energy and your perseverance increases. And hindrances and obstructions, I mean, when you think about it, it's like they become so small in the face of death. So they're sort of, we free ourselves from them. And this recollection of our death stimulates us to work harder at the Dharma. Because really, no matter what we do, it benefits us directly. And indirectly, it'll benefit everyone else, because we're actually taking control over this process of living and dying for the benefit of others. And we have good reason to do that. So we are, we're doing our best. But it's important at the end. So in other words, you gain energy to complete the path. In fact, what's my book? I have a book here called Graceful Exits. And it's fantastic. So it's the last moments of the lifespan of people who are engaged in a spiritual path. So it's the last words people who are engaged in a spiritual path say. And some of them, it's a fantastic material to read. So there's a great, there's a lot you can do. That's for sure, to make sure the end of our life conjoined with the practice of Dharma and recollection of death and impermanence. There's a great deal of energy to it. So again, to complete the path, we have more perseverance. And finally, the state of peace and happiness. Now, so people die differently, we each do. But in the presentation of the Buddha Dharma, that, what can you say, that vast scope or plethora of different ways can be put into three. And the first one, which is terrific for us, and I really do hope we can get to this stage, that we can die without regret or fear. Secondly, you die knowing you led a meaningful life. And thirdly, you actually die with a sense of gladness or joy. So would anybody like to, so what's happened to you now? Okay, you've got so like I said, there's no fear or regrets. You die knowing you led a very meaningful life, and there's a sense of gladness and joy about your dying and your death. So can you guys see how these three states might correspond to the recollection of death? Is there a joining place there you can see where that might be happening?
Yeah, Eddie, I'm really interested what that joining place is, because often when I'm just kind of thrown into the certainty of death, I'll freeze rather than go through this process to come to the really best conclusion, which is got to lead, a meaningful life now. It can't just be for these very small-minded goals. But yeah, what that process of how to join it together so you don't just freeze up. Like when you went into that doctor's surgery and you knew immediately what to do, how come you knew immediately what to do instead of just froze?
Because I'm not dead yet. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some people do freeze. I mean, there's this, some people freeze, some go and try to live as much of their lives as they possibly can before they die, which is usually spent in as much, if you're not a spiritual person, then you spend it, what do? You spend it on pleasure or
just hedonism, isn't it? Yeah.
hedonism, basically, isn't it, before you die, because you're set to die.
I suppose I'm like halfway there in that I could probably die without regret, but I'm not sure if I could die without fear.
Well, from where we are, I mean, these results, of course, are dependent upon, like the 3 results of having no fear and no regret. Secondly, knowing that you've led a meaningful life. And third, being able to die with a sense of gladness and joy. I don't imagine to anyone that that's immediately apparent to you. What I do imagine is that you need to do something so that this actually does happen.
Yep. So that's like the whole point of this contemplation, is that we get to that rather than get to freeze.
Yeah, that's right. We have to act. So in a way, there's a text I read once that said, what is the function of a sentient being? So, we are sentient beings. What's our function?
To act.
To act. That's right. That's what I read. I was really going, whoa. And I thought, that's right. We can't not act. Not acting is an act, isn't it? And then you have all the actions. We have to act. And that's, this whole thing is to lead us to that. The next 3 weeks is all going to lead to that. We have to act on this knowledge. And what we've got to do is work out what's the best way to act. Now there's got to be a number of things I can act on. You go, yep, there are. Well, what can I do? These are just valid, normal questions we should ask. And we go, well, thank goodness the rest of the Buddha Dharma is based on that. It goes, you betcha you've got to act. And here's what you can do. This is what all the other people have done before you. And this is how it worked out for many of them. And so we can engage in that sort of study, that information, that knowledge, and go, okay, I'm a human being, I'm a sentient being, I'm an actor. What am I going to do? And you decide. Like I said, what I think, and I'm sure many of the great lamas and will all tell you the same sort of thing, and it will come to you over time and thinking, that if you think, okay, so I've got this continuity of life after life after life, and death is just like a door opening and closing, right? You just go through them. It never, ever stops. Yeah, okay, so consciousness goes on, no beginning, no end. There's an I imputed to it. I'm the person. This keeps going. What's the best I could do for myself? And if you think it through, you'll come to be a Buddha. That's the very best thing I can do for myself. And if there's no end to this consciousness thing, well, why don't I might as well go for that? Because the benefits of being a Buddha outweigh those of being a sentient being billions and billions of times over. What you can do as a fully enlightened being is so much greater than as an ordinary, unenlightened sentient being. The difference is so massive. Yet that's what we're capable of. So I go, okay, well, I'd like to do that. I'd like to be able to, if I'm always going to be finding myself in rebirth states, and it's always I need help or I want to give help, then why should I be the best helper of all? Why not go for that? You know, and you can sort of backtrack and work along, go, how do these delusions exist? Oh, they don't have any true existence. They just arise in dependence upon conditions. Yeah, what if the conditions weren't there? Well, they wouldn't arise. You know, you can work and go, so what's required? You go, well, I'm not going to do that. We work out over time, and that's the idea behind this, what to do and what not to do. So the first thing is to not do, don't forget the fact that you're going to die. Don't forget that. That is certain. Knowing that, decide the next actions you want to take. Because, you know, like we're actors in this play of samsara and nirvana. You know, I better get back to our... and so now we're going to move into this next section. So here we have these... this actual meditation, and this meditation is made up of 3 points and a decision, you know, the act that we must engage in. So let's have a look at it. So these 3 topics now come under a major heading called death is certain. And what we need to recollect under this topic, death is certain, is that what they call the Lord of Death will definitely come. So death here has been, what do you call that term?
Personified.
Personified. That's right, as a Lord. Well, it is the Lord over anything produced. Anything produced must disintegrate, must fall apart. The lifetime we have cannot be extended. And in fact, it's diminishing from moment to moment, even though it doesn't look like that. And thirdly, while I am alive, there is little time for practice. So again, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, from the foundation of Buddhist practice, says, everyone who is born dies. And death is a natural result of birth. Death is common to all beings. It's the great equalizing factor, and no one can avoid it. The 8 worldly concerns, none of those can prevent death, and even holy beings and great leaders die. So, you know, we can ask ourselves, you know, like, am I completely different? Am I something that's so different that Christ can die and Buddha can die, but I'm not going to? And you're going to have to go, no. So here's the, like I said, the major thing, death is certain, but once we get this information and we accept it, we go, well, that's true. What are we to do? Being actors, right? It's this. I definitely must practice Dharma. And this decision takes, you know, at the time of death itself, that's how you find yourself. I don't have any fear. My life has been meaningful. And in fact, I can die with joy. I'm about to. And you go like, why? Because I acted on this. I acted on this practice of Dharma. Okay, so I see by my clock, I've got about 19 to 20 minutes left. So go on to these 3 major points. So what I'll do is I'll take each of the points and say a few words about it. So the Lord of Death will definitely come. So here is a very old stone sort of relief of the passing away of the Buddha. So you can see his disciples sitting around him, and he's lying there in his death posture. So here, Geshe Sopa says, in the past, even the bodies the Buddhas used to attain enlightenment passed away. In fact, all those who sought their individual liberation, the Pratyeka Buddhas, they've also passed away. So every person who sought their personal liberation and attained it is no longer with us. The Buddha himself, the body of Shakyamuni Buddha, is no longer with us. So, like I said, anything that is born must die. And that's just the fact. And we cannot escape death once we're born. So in many ways, like, it's not really bad news or good news, is it? It's just the news. It's just how it is.
And Eddie, there's just the thing about this one too, that it's not like some magical thing that if you're a Buddha, then you don't pass away. Like, it's not like you can bend the rules of nature is kind of the thing, which I know, you hold out hope for sometimes. Is have some kind of magical thing happen.
Yeah, and one of the magical things that happens is that you think, yes, I'm going to die. Of course I'm going to die, but not right now. It's like surely I can do something. And there's lots of things you can do, but you can't escape. So one of the things you might think of doing, as many people have done, is preserve my body. I want my life to be extended. Right? So there are people, as you know, they've had their bodies frozen or put away somewhere and go, they think this is me, right? I am my body. And when the time is right, the conditions have changed, come and wake me up. That's what, they're saying it always, I want my life to be extended. So, but I'm saying, like, your lifetime can't be extended. So once you are born, in fact, from the very moment you enter your mother's womb, every other moment represents a shortening of your lifespan. I know that's not how we often think of it. We think we've got to grow old. But if you're growing old, you're growing closer to your death. Death is becoming closer to you. The Geshe Sopa says there is no way to extend your lifespan indefinitely. So you might read of stories where people like Nagarjuna, for instance, had his lifespan extended. In fact, there's actual practices you can do to extend your lifespan. And it's true, these can work up to a point, but it's not like forever. Once you're born, you die. So Geshe Sopa says there's no way to extend your lifespan. Your life is leaking away moment by moment, hour by hour, day by day. Even while your life carries on, whether you're lying down or taking a stroll, the enforcers of sickness and aging are taking you nowhere else but toward your death. I just realized, wow, that's a real gangster analogy, isn't it? The two enforcers will come and grab you, they're bringing you out to see the boss, and the boss is dead, and he's going, well, of course, you have to
And
go.
of course, the other thing here, Eddie, is that, that the time is marching on and it's going through the hourglass, even when you're asleep, even when you're distracted. And that's the thing that gets me, that you don't just have to be aware of it. It's just happening anyway.
That's right. And these types, especially the meditation on subtle impermanence, that really gives you this idea of, my God, like whether I'm asleep or awake or eating, it's taking place and I can't stop it. There's no one that can stop it.
So with the extending the lifespan, I mean, in a way, it's kind of like, if your house is falling down, you can do a little bit to shore it up or to put new foundations or new windows or whatever. But in the end, all the houses fall down, like when you look at the millennia on the planet.
Yeah, well, that's right. If you just look back on our lifespan on this planet, the humans on the planet, you go, well, where are all the houses that people used to live in? They have all gone. If you ask them, where are all those people? Well, they've all gone.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I remember reading a story about a young, what do you call him, American Indian boy. So he asked his grandfather, so where do they all go to, grandfather? And he just pointed out to the world, and they're right here. Yeah, that's right. You look at any animal, that was, there's any being that has a consciousness. We went out, we came back, and we forgot.
the other thing that this picture's reminding me of, just because it's black and white, is, you know, sometimes they play those old black and white movies on telly from the 30s and the 40s, and you know, it's all this activity and everything going on, and you just know every single person in that movie's dead.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that yesterday morning, Miffy, and thinking, there's our present ghosts. No wonder the other cultures didn't like their pictures being taken, because they're dead, but look, we're looking at them as if they're alive. So, okay, we can't avoid death. Death will definitely come, the Lord of Death. Like I said, we're products, we're impermanent, we're subject to disintegration. Being born, we will definitely die. The second point is, look, lifetime can't be extended definitely. And while you are alive, there's very little time for practice. So I really like this picture, and that's why I put it up. It's called like the rat race, right? Everybody's getting on the train to go to work. But it's also, I like it because rats are quite intelligent creatures. And they're very, what do you call them? They're like us in many ways. They're community sort of based. They're very affectionate to their offspring. Very smart. But what do they spend their lives doing?
Running the
Pretty much.
wheel.
We're probably the smartest creatures on the planet, and what are we doing?
We're not that much different, is the thing.
Not much
Like,
different at all. And the rats don't practice Dharma, and for most of humanity, they don't either. So, you know, if you add up, I've done this, and you can too, and you might have read of others who have done it, is you can just look at the 24 hours that you have in the day and go, okay, how many hours do I spend sleeping? You know, okay, that'd be that much. What about eating? You go, well, that's about this much. How about entertaining yourself? That's this much. Shopping, that's this much. When you put it all together, you don't find much time left for you. In fact, there's, I remember a great Lama talking about the first 20 years of your life wasted because you're just growing up. You don't even know about Dharma. Then the next 20 years of your life, it's like, well, I've got my family and work and all these sort of things. I don't have time for Dharma. So then you got, now you're into 20, 40, 40 to 60. Anyway, you just ends up saying it's a life wasted. Time took up all these other things. All these other things required my time, and I ended up with this amount of time. So I did an analysis like this over like 50, 60 years, something like that. It's not very long you actually get for Dharma practice. Something maybe 2 weeks. It's not very long. But don't be discouraged, because I saw Miffy's mother die. And she took up the Dharma when she was in her 40s. And I'm the same. She was able to make a difference to her death, the way she died. I expect to do the same. And I hope you do too. Sooner you start, you're on the right track, start straight off. You'll start to act properly. You'll be able to think, you're concentrated, you're focused.
and
Even
it
though the
isn't
time
there.
will not be much, the quality of your time, that's the thing.
Isn't there something that happens too, that when you do start thinking about Dharma practice, you don't make the distinction between life and Dharma anymore anyway.
Same thing. That's right. Your life, your Dharma is your life. You've got to sort of integrate these two.
Yeah.
See, there's no separation. So again, from Geshe Sopa, he says, this life will finish soon. When the end comes, you'll need something reliably helpful. What is that thing? As we know, it's practicing the Dharma. He says, we should think, why am I enjoying the deceitful temporary pleasures of this life. Instead of wasting time this way, I should be practicing the Dharma. While I have this precious life, I must transform my mind by pacifying the afflictions and cultivating good qualities. Doing this, I will be more peaceful at the time of death, and my future rebirth will be much better. And in fact, this life I live will be a good, meaningful life. So it's terrific for this life and any other life that follows. The practice of Dharma. But the wanting to practice requires this knowledge of the certainty of our death. That there's no extending the life. There's no good coming, being 70 or 80 years old and suddenly realizing, oh my gosh, I've got oh my God, I believe. It's, yeah, okay, that's great, but it's very, very late in the piece. You can still be helped. You can still do something for you. You can still do something for yourself. You're not lost, but it's late in the piece. I always remember the advice that my own teacher, Khyentse Rinpoche Geshe Tashi Sering, said. He said, at the end of this life, when this life is finished and you find yourself in the lower realms, understand that you've just wasted the previous life. I said, whoa, that's right. So don't waste this life and find yourself in the lower realms. There's no need for it.
And that's almost like the minimum that we should be doing,
That's
isn't it?
exactly right. That's exactly right. In fact, the last time I went to a teaching class, that's how he started off. Going, what's the practice of Dharma for? Why are you practicing Dharma? And that's what he said. We are practicing Dharma to avoid lower realm rebirth, right? If that happens to you, you've wasted your time listening to me. You've wasted everything you've done about what we call Dharma. So do your best not to have that happen. So now we've got these three, right? While I'm alive, there's little time for practice. Your lifetime can't be extended, and the Lord of Death will definitely arrive. What's required of us? How are we to act? And before I come straight to that, once again, just to remind you, saying, as Miffy pointed out, it doesn't matter whether night or day, your life slips away. And we can't avoid death. So we must practice Dharma. You've got to decide this. I must practice the Dharma. Since death is definite and practicing the Dharma will benefit us in this life, at the time of death, and in future lives. It's like a no-brainer now, isn't it? I hope it is. Wow, this life, at the time of my death and after death, it'll benefit me. Okay, it sounds like a great deal. No downside on this. Let's practice Dharma. So now, I think from here, we've got to sort of really work out what is Dharma? What is this thing we should be practicing? How can I do that? And I'll try to point out and help you with is the first thing is the motivation. Everything kicks off from there, the why. So what makes anything Dharma is the intention for the act, the motivation. And if you read wide enough and so forth, you'll come to the same conclusion that many others have done, is that I'm practicing to become enlightened to benefit others. And everything else you do from that's included within this. So it says, it's like this is the best Dharma practitioner will die with joy, the middling without sorrow, and the least without regret. So I think that my own opinion is, I'm no great Dharma practitioner. This is possible for all of us. The more quickly we engage with the Dharma, the more likely this is to take place. Because Dharma is we just got to habituate ourselves to a way of thinking, speaking, and acting.
Eddie, this is a really great way to take our our spiritual temperature, isn't it, to look at
Oh,
this?
yeah, for sure.
And
For
also
sure.
to know that there is this progression. So there's still hope.
Yeah. I mean, for all of us, we can look back here and say, do I have any regrets right now? What do I regret? How can I deal with those regrets? If I were to die tonight, or suddenly death were to come upon, would I be sorrowful about something? Is there something I'm sorry about?
And also to know that we don't just have to kind of shut down and just, grit our teeth about it, but we can aim for this dying as a Dharma practitioner with joy. Like, that's radical.
Oh, for sure. So one of the things I've thought a few times up, and then I found out an actual Lama had done it, was I was thinking, so if you're lying there dying in front of other people, one thought you could have is, I'm going to show you how to die. Relax, folks. Watch me die. This is how it happens. This is what's going to happen. Happens to me, it'll be a bit like it for you. I'll show you. So many years ago, we had a Dharma practitioner called Glenn Mullen come here, and I read his book on death and dying. His Lama said to him, I've got a special teaching for you tonight. Come along. And so they did. And as he had a heart attack in the teaching, started to die. Right? And he's still saying, like, do you get it? Right? And everybody's really shocked. It's like, we've got to stop this. We've got to stop this. And, they went out, they got a doctor, and Rinpoche said, are you sure I can continue? But I thought, well, we could, we're already dying, aren't we? We can at least show somebody else, it doesn't have to be fearful. We know of many stories where people have died without fear.
And also just Dharma practitioners, in hospital and the nurses and doctors going, I can't believe you're not freaking out. You're so calm. Yeah. And even that, can have an amazing effect on those around you. Yeah.
So we could die like that, and go, whether you're a nurse or my brother or my sister, whoever you are around me, I'll illustrate death with this idea, and our intention, of course, to bring you closer to the Dharma, to bring you to enlightenment. I'm looking after you. I want you to watch this.
And Eddie, actually, that's what my mother did, so she died at Lungri Tangpa Center and wasn't fearful, and just being there in that experience and seeing that it's possible, like that's more than anything that you can read. To actually witness something like that, someone actually having a good death, gives you some form of confidence that is just incredible.
Yeah, this is the real deal. This is possible. And like I said, so Miffy's mum took it up in her 40s. I was the same. She passed away in her 70s, early 70s. And like I said, that's 33 years. But you start knocking out a third of that time for sleep, this amount of time for eating, this amount of time for shopping and toilets and all that. Yeah, gee, there's not much time left. Yeah, that's right.
And yet it's doable.
And yet. Yeah. So I think we need to be sincere, and that'll take us a long way. Yeah. So we've come to the end of our class. So what's the takeaway? You know that there are a lot of benefits. There's 6 in particular I mentioned, but there are many others you can find about in the text. And finally, we can all acknowledge the certainty of our own death, and the best thing we can do is to practice Dharma. So we've come finally to the end. I should do this before I get instructed to do it. So is there anything final that anybody would like to offer or to question about or anything like that?
Oh, yeah.
That's great. Look, went along there, I could see some of more of the faces. Okay. So
wait, Eddie. Barbara's got a question.
Oh, Barbara's great. Great, Barb.
And then Yolanda has a question as well.
Sure, let's do that. Barb?
that Miffy was really instrumental in helping me with. And it was a teaching that you did, Miffy, I don't even remember when. And it was a time where I really was feeling like I was practicing and I wasn't practicing. I wasn't at a point where I was incorporating Dharma into my daily life, into just my daily activities, which we all need to do. And what you taught was like to like when you have coffee, think of coffee compassion. When you grab your keys, think of keys for kindness. And what I have done, what I did after that teaching is I went through the entire alphabet. And there isn't anything that I can see when I'm on a walk, when I'm driving, you know, there isn't anything that I can't come up with that will then bring me back to the Dharma in some way, shape, or form and keep it more in focus for me.
Yeah.
So that was super helpful for me. Thank you.
Right.
Wow, and that is super inspiring to hear, Barbara. I can't believe the whole alphabet. That's just like blown my mind. That's great.
And what was funny is when I came to, and again, I see things that start with a letter and then that will, you know, make me think. And I came to the letter X, and thank God I don't see many xylophones, but the word I came up with was Shayla from one of my Zoomies. So Shayla, if I ever see a xylophone, I will think of you and you will remind me of staying in the Dharma. So thank
Fantastic. You. Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay. Now, if we had one other.
Yeah, Ilanda had a question or a comment.
Okay. Sure. What is that?
Yeah, so my question was, what was the title of the book of quotes that you said? It was a book of quotes that spiritualists said right before they died.
Yeah, it's
Graceful exits.
Graceful exits. Yeah, graceful exits.
And then my other question, it's just a random question. On slide 2, you had a photo up. Was that photo of Tibet or was that a photo of Day of the Dead?
That was the Day of the Dead in Mexico. Okay. Yeah, that's right.
I feel like Tibetan practice and Mexican practice is very close when it comes to death.
Sure, that's right.
Yeah, well, they both have dancing skeletons, and they both have, you know, that interchangeable kind of symbology of flowers as the peaceful representation of realizations, and skulls as the wrathful representation of realizations. And they, you know, but they're all realizations. So there's a lot that we're very inspired by Day of the Dead anyway.
Okay, Linda, thank you. Okay, folks, so let's dedicate willingness to listen to these teachings, our ability to adopt them, and our knowledge that we can actually act on what we've heard. So we'll just put this little thing up. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. And may the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow. And may that born have no decline but increase forevermore, such that as long as space abides and as long as sentient beings abide, may we too abide to dispel their sorrows. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. It's been a really enjoyable class. I really enjoyed myself presenting the material, and it's lovely that you're here to engage in our Dharma practice. And hopefully we'll all be alive next week and we can once again engage in practice. Okay, we'll see you all, and thank you very, very much.